asking who to trust. Without the proof, it turns to dust. Build it open.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome in, welcome in. Let me get a few settings changed on my side. Let me get some of the team up onto the stage. We've got Metasudo, aka Kames, coming up. I see Kylan down in the audience. Debo, Wolfgang, Jenny. What's up, everybody? Yo, Kames, can you hear me this week?
I can hear you, Woods. Yes.
Hey, let's go.
Yes. No mishaps. Dude, I was so confused last week. I'm just like, yo, Woods is on top of it all the time. Why is he not talking to me? You're like, what's going on here? Dude, the MC go.
You say you were confused. I was confused because I'm out here talking like, all right, so Kames is going to do some things. What's up, Kames? How are you? It was fantastic.
All right. But we got it solved. That was the important part.
Yes.
But you trust everybody. What up, what up?
We got it solved. I'm going to put out one last announcement, and then I say we kick things off.
Ooh. Jumping into it, baby.
We are live.
Let me open up the chat so I can see the folks chattering.
Ooh, lots of people filling in. Nice to see everybody. All right. One last announcement is out there. I'm going to throw something out to the team as a reminder. But we can go ahead, get some things kicked off here. GM, everyone. I see lots of people sliding in. We've got Kames sharing a screen. We have all of the announcements out. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here and being patient as I got announcements and things out. Welcome. This is our second official Semantic Engineering Call. If you're new to this call, you weren't here a couple weeks ago, the reason why this exists, is that every app built on intuition is drawing from the same pool of atoms, the same predicates, classifications. And so if we each go around and invent our own versions of those things, we end up with a set of private databases that maybe share a chain, but they don't share much else. And so if we take the time to agree on them, everything ends up composing. And so this call is where we have some time to agree on what happens out loud, bring our questions together. If you're not sure how to format certain data or what predicates to use, perfect place to do that. It's also an opportunity for us to talk about some things going on behind the scenes or on the back end, the coding side, whether it's our new packages, whether it's some changes to how we identify information. And so last week we talked about some of the new packages. This week, or not last week, it was 2 weeks ago, talked about some of the new packages. Today, Kames is going to be opening on intuition IDs. And that kind of sits below what we covered last time and below a lot of the other packages. So without further ado, I'm not the best person to explain this information about intuition IDs. Kames, you want to tell us a little bit more about what is going on with the IDs of our data?
Of course, Mr. Woods. Thank you for that introduction. I would love to. So yeah, before jumping into that, just to pick back a little bit off of what Woods was saying was, 2 weeks ago we had introduced Unchained, the site. So if you have not visited, now is the time. It's unchained.intuition.systems. And what we presented was classifications, predicates, enrichments. Basically, the big vision for how do we coordinate at scale, right? Right now, it's a couple of us. There's a couple of apps contributing, but the question always is how do you scale that to the nth degree? How do you have a lot of people contribute? And so part of that was showing how you eventually get to that state. But what we want to focus on today is the building blocks of that. So we have this end goal we want to get to, which is a lot of data, a lot of enrichments, a lot of atoms that are contextualized. There's a lot of deep relationships between them, and they're useful for people. But to get there, we have to create atoms, right? And we have to create atoms in a way that other people can read from them. They can predict what they will be. And so part of what we've been doing is researching what is the best way to represent an atom that allows for that determinism, so multiple people can arrive at the same destination without coordination, while also providing enough of a trail or breadcrumbs to infer what is the context for that atom. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today, is essentially what is the bare minimum required to create an atom while still allowing for coordination. And so to that end, how I think the best to frame it is to think of it, identity should be small, context should grow. And so with that, we'll jump into it. So to frame the problem a little bit, what we introduced last week was how to structure your atoms using the schemas that we've used for our original alpha release. Right now we use schema.org, and so what you're seeing on the screen is an example of structuring an atom using that schema, right? We put in the name, we put in the artist, we also have a reference to a URL that we originally pasted in to get this atom, to create this atom. The problem with this, though, is different APIs may respond with different data coming back. And so this example is a little hard to notice, but there's a space right here in stay, and there's not a space here in this example. And so this would change the ID. This would change the ID of the atom. It would be different in different apps. But a better example might be someone includes a dash, or the name is it's a remix, whatever it may be. And so because of this, two different developers may end up with different atoms. So how do we overcome this problem? So part of that is, how do we reduce this atom to not allow for things like characters to change the ID or spaces? And so what we've landed on is what we are calling the intuition identifier. And so what this allows us to do is represent atoms just as ID, while giving enough context and information to infer what that classification or what that atom represents. And I'll go more into the details, but what that looks like is essentially a string that starts with int : and then the position that we've taken is we are not going to have the answer to all the IDs. In fact, there are many that already exist, many that have been thought about deeply, and what the intuition identifier is meant to be is a superset of all other IDs. And so what that allows us to do is, in the second half of this string, is reference a category or specific vertical of atoms. So in this example, I have reference ISRC, and so for people who are not familiar with music, every song has an ISRC number. And so this allows me to represent this song using the persistent ID that's the same on every platform, right? This is an agreed upon standard. Everyone from Apple Music to Spotify to MusicBrainz uses this ISRC. And so what happens, instead of having an atom where things can change, we go down to just this string. And so why this is important is, for the reason stated, is we want this atom to be able to be contextualized, have triples added to it, and grow both on-chain and off-chain. And that's a big part of this, why we're going this route, because it allows that coordination to happen regardless of relationships between people in the network. Preserve trust. So the next topic that's kind of important with this intuition identifier is, I just mentioned there is a lot of existing ID structures that we can opt into, which is great. Things like ISRC, ISBN, things for books, songs, etc. Where it starts to get more complicated, and where we as a community have an opportunity, is to set the foundation for becoming the default identity for things in the world that are more abstract, don't have a default registry, and we have the opportunity to become that ID. And so what that allows us to do is set certain schemas and specs and allow us to kind of deal with the complexity of the world. So what I mean by that is a person can be an atom. A person is a concept in and of itself, but it's represented maybe as a social media account or a blog. And this problem is, so there's been a lot of years of research of like how do you represent a person, and so intuition is uniquely positioned to help solve those problems, come up with schemas for people, terms, and things that are more abstract. And essentially, I won't belabor this point, but if people are inclined in the community to help contribute to this, we have this opportunity to become the foundation for that idea. Anyways, let me let me move forward a little bit. Cool. So this is where I think things start to change a little bit of where we kind of introduced some concepts last week. And so where we introduced classifications and predicates was a lot of the tools needed to get an atom contextualized and rich within applications. And so instead of that, what now happens is just this ID, triples continue to be written about it, so the structure, sorry, I'm a little scattered. Let's move. Cool. Let me see if I can explain this concept in a way that makes sense. So for the developers that are familiar with Intuition RS as of now, the backend serves data as it comes from on-chain. But I think what I am trying to convey is moving forward, a lot of that will change. The system to accommodate IDs and to scale will need to be able to allow triples to be stated and aggregate expressions be returned. And so what you're seeing here is an example of where we have taken a basic atom, and over time, certain statements have been made about it, whether it's an about statement, a rating, triple, or playlist. And so then what you're seeing in response is the intuition identifier, but a history, a breadcrumb trail of how this atom was then hydrated and enriched. So that can come from on-chain, from triples, as well as off-chain and artifacts. And ultimately, the end state that we get back from is intuition backend and intuition core. You'll be able to decide how you want to interpret these statements. And so instead of there being one canonical version, what this allows you to do is to share a single identity, but different people can decide to hydrate this object differently. And so it solves the problem of there being only one interpretation and the system only allowing for that. What we're trying to do is make that much more flexible. Yeah, so this gets a little bit more into that. So the important part is, even though we introduced schemas last week, and that's what we'll continue to do, I think the point that needs to be kind of stressed here is even though the atom is just an ID, still different schemas can be applied on top of it. And so one provider may use just Spotify and Apple Music, and another may just want to use open source and Music Brains. And even though they have different sources, they can still share the same atom and interpret it differently. Similar to what I was just saying, people now have the choice to interpret the graph differently. Scale by storing. Cool, let me jump to another slide deck. Cool, so I want to jump a little bit more into problems I know developers are having, specifically you, Kylan. I know you've brought this up, and this has been a topic of discussion for yourself and us, which is how do you represent people or things that are on social media accounts? And so moving forward, what we can do now with the intuition identifier is essentially have scales or different ways to interpret social media accounts and have them attached as atoms. And so what I've done here is an example of two paths we have. So say, for example, with x.com, you can save either their public handle, which is a great fallback if you don't have OAuth, or if you allow your user to log in, you can have their OAuth identity. And so I think what I want to stress here is there still is no perfect answer, but I think what the coordination problem that we hope to solve, and really what we need feedback from, is how do we want to start shaping IDs for atoms that may be more obscure or need to grow over time? What are some of these core ID patterns that we want to establish? And then what are a few of the tools needed on top of that? So for example, I think we all need to start sharing social media accounts in a way that's persistent. We've been trying to do this for a while, and there's like different variations. But I think coming to some agreed upon standard where this is the string we want to use, and then as well as I think setting up some of the OAuth packages, setting up some of the kind of predictable patterns to generate these. This is an opportunity, I think, for the community to contribute, add plugins for all the different social media providers we will need, and coming up with the different paths for both authenticated and non-authenticated. All right, let me jump back to this one. Cool. So next step is talking a little bit about an update we are proposing with our smart contracts. So the problem that we face with atoms today is anytime you change a character, the ID changes. However, some atoms are still difficult to represent just as IDs. And so what we are proposing is adding a new field to the multi-vault called URIs. And what this will allow developers to do is to opt into this new approach with identifiers, as well as have the opportunity to still contextualize an atom when it is created. So there's a couple of benefits here. I think long-term that will allow atoms to grow over time, both in can this atom be proved that it is contextualized correctly, meaning does someone own a document? Can they sign a document with a private key? Can they run some compute? They can also add an Rweave stream to this URI, and over time you can add artifacts and snapshots that have been taken off-chain and represent them on-chain as well. And so what this allows us to do is essentially pick two, or not lock ourselves into just having this one approach, and continue to experiment with contextualizing atoms and adding metadata as they get created.
And Kylan questions, how does that affect the atom term ID?
Good question. It does not. So it's not part of the hashing algorithm. We've kept it separate, and it's emitted as an event. And so the event is emitted in the same transaction as the atom creation, and from there, the backend can associate with the original ID.
Cool. Understood.
Good. Cool. So yeah, that wraps it. I think I was trying to convey a lot of concepts here, so I definitely want to open up for a conversation. But I think the important part is atoms are going to continue to get smaller and smaller. There is definitely some agreed upon IDs that are easy wins, but I think what the call out is, and the opportunity for us Intuition to work with our community, is to explore all the other classifications and schemas. And so what we're really looking for is people to definitely hop in, understand what's going on, and then share with us what they're doing in their apps. So like, what data is important to you? What IDs do we need to come up with today? So you are able to continue creating atoms that hopefully follow this standard and then can be used by other apps. So I think that's the big call today, is understanding more of the data structures, and then how can we get your atoms aligned with this and help you kind of understand the full life cycle and what that looks like for enrichments. So anyways, I will pause it there and we can open it up for questions.
Real quick before questions, can you go back a couple slides to where you showed how the URI field is being used? I think to the right of this one. Yeah, this one. So just to kind of like elaborate on the new URI field, there's also like, just for reference, we still need to get this audited. This is going to be lumped together with quite a lot of additional kind of quality of life improvements in an audit that we're going to kick off relatively shortly. So that audit will include the fee proxy contract. That'll include a new curve, which we think is super interesting. It'll include all of the stuff that was found, all the changes that we already made from Code Arena and any kind of like bug bounty stuff that was found. But it will also include this. And just to kind of like contextualize why a little bit more how to leverage this and how to think about it. So if you look here, like the current Atom data field, you have the new intuition identifier in there that Kames presented. Obviously, everything that works right now will continue to work. Everything will be backwards compatible, like no atoms will be lost. But moving forward, like what we thought we needed was like everyone to be able to come to consensus on which atoms to use a little bit better to represent each individual concept. And the best way to come to consensus on which atom to use is to represent a concept like a song, for instance, is use an atom that has the minimum required amount of data to differentiate that song from other songs or that concept from other concepts. So if you look here, ISRC, that's the song standard. If you just use atom data if you follow our intuition ID format, you put the ISRC number for the song there, then you can have 100% guarantees that everyone across the ecosystem will be using the same atom to represent the same song. So hopefully that makes sense. And in that case, you might not need the URI field, because what the URI field is really meant to do is add additional metadata to an atom to kind of allow people to grok what that concept is that is trying to be represented while keeping the atom data field as minimal as possible. So I think the best instance of this is a person. So this was another example that was shown where it's like, okay, we want to represent Kames as an atom. How do we do that? Like, do we put his first name, last name, location? Like, what's the set of data that we use to represent a person? And with this new approach, what we can do is keep the atom data field super thin and super small and just put like the intuition identifier for, let's say, a person there, which could be maybe their social media account or something else. And then you can attach additional URIs or just arbitrary additional data that doesn't get used in the deterministic computation of like the atom ID that helps people understand, okay, this this atom is meant to represent this concept. So you could put like if we're trying to represent Kames, you could put all his social media accounts. You could put some other thing that is used to help identify what this atom is trying to represent. So that the ID field stays super thin, super lean, so that we can kind of come to consensus on like the same atoms for same concepts. But you can still attach additional metadata to those atoms to help differentiate it from others. So hopefully that add a little bit of context here. It took me a little bit to kind of like fully wrap my head around this. I just wanted to kind of add a little bit more for y'all, just to hopefully make a little bit more sense.
I would say really well said, Billy. I think you described it much better than I, so thank you for that.
Yeah, that helps quite a bit. Thank you for elaborating there a bit, Billy. Now, I know we have a few builders in the chat who had some things that they wanted to talk about. I brought up Kylan so far. Kylan, I know, had some questions specific to social media accounts, which Kames was mentioning. What's up, Kylan? How are you, man?
Hey, things are going great. Yeah, no, I have a few questions. I guess the first one, though, is since you guys are more like on the protocol level, I know some of us app developers, we're not always looking at what everyone else is building. Where are the main areas of overlap that you've seen? Like, has it mostly been website, like URL atoms, or social media atoms, or music, or movies, or companies? Like, from your guys' vantage point, what have you guys seen?
I think from my vantage point, a lot of it has been around people. I think every single builder and every single use case like incorporates people in some way. And unfortunately, like people is the hardest. It's the hardest concept to kind of like come up with atoms for, because I mean, you don't want to use like people's social security number, or I mean, and that's also like U.S. specific. So there's not really like a universal person identifier yet. But what I think is very cool is we can use this opportunity to come up with that, and we can use this opportunity to come up with like the universal identifier standards for like all objects in the entire world. Because I think we can all agree, like if every single thing in the world had like a standard universal like identifier type, there's so many benefits that come with that. You could do voting in countries, like you could do like it just everything gets so much easier if you have this concept of these universal identifiers. And so this intuition identifier spec is meant to be the machine that helps us generate these identifiers for everything across the entire world. Wherever there already is a universal standard, we just use those. But where there's not a standard, we got to come up with it. So that was a little bit of a side tangent, but I think that's useful context. But yeah, I think I would say that the main thing that, if I had to look at like the overlap between literally every single app that's being built, everyone's dealing with people. And that if we had to focus on like one hard intuition identifier type first, I think people's probably where we go. And that also incorporates yours, Kylan, of like social media accounts for that person and other things. So yeah, hopefully that is, I'm happy to take this answer in any other direction that might be helpful, but yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, so maybe we should just make a little bit of, I don't know, a call to action or whatever action item. So if anyone's app deals with trying to identify people, then let's just, over the course of the next week, few weeks or whatever, let's start the conversation somewhere, either on the discourse or in one of the channels here.
Yeah, I think the forum sounds like a perfect place to try and start that conversation. And if people prefer it in Discord, we can do that here as well. But yeah, let's get something spun up.
Cool.
Start that conversation.
Yeah, that's 100% agree. Like, Kames, you want to like kick off a thread with kind of like your current thinking to date on the approach, like the approach to the best that we've got with respect to the approach to people and their social accounts.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to do that. And I think just to add, it's almost like we need to take a mini survey too. Like obviously people's the big one, but it'd be great if people could share on the forum and Discord, like what are some of the atoms they would like to see? Because one thing is we can't think of all the IDs, and so we do need your guys' help to kind of get us there. But for sure, we'll start with person. I'll happily share kind of the thoughts there.
Kames, real quick. Also, like Culinary is another kind of entity type that is a big one, but just websites generally. Like, do we have like general website to support, or do we like for quote unquote websites, do we try to go like one layer deeper in terms of classification?
Yeah, so what we can classify websites, that's pretty straightforward, and then it gets a little more difficult to classify it beyond that. Strategies we can do, but like maybe Kylan, you want to share a little bit? Are you imagining something beyond like a classification of a web page, or is there a specific?
No, I think this is a good question because so I at times, since the data field supports URIs, for a long time I've been just using the URLs, straight URLs when I can. So it sounds like you guys generally are nudging the community towards JSON objects. Would you say that's a general, not I don't know about strategy, but do you think that's the way that this is the direction it's going?
So it's going towards strings ideally. So the intuition identifier is meant to just be a string as much as possible, but you can use objects for the context and the URIs. So I'll give an example of what we could do with a potential website is if we want the intuition identifier, it goes int : website : and then we can either hash the website, but then you lose the website data, and you can add it back as a URI, Or if the website is short enough, you can simply embed it in the ID. And I think this is where there is trade-offs in every direction, right? And so we kind of just have to go building block by building block, pick some of these high important classifications, and just lay out the matrix of like options, and then kind of discuss what is our preference, what do we want to do, what do we gain or lose here. But I'll kind of these slides didn't have enough code examples, but when I make a post, I think I'll show more of like how I would do this website, or in this case, just so it's easier to reason about like what could be.
Okay, so the preference is to use these strings and fill in the characteristics with actual triples.
In some circumstances, yes, but I think the better way to look at it is, say for example, a Spotify song is the description or the about is ephemeral. It's going to change, and that often can just be gotten from a third-party service provider. What I would argue is the important part of what you want to represent on chain is the relationships of that song with other entities, as opposed to just the descriptions about that song. So like, is it in a playlist? What artist made it? And then the metadata should be handled off chain. And that's what we'll get a little bit more into as we go in these coming weeks, which is like enrichments. And so this is the part that is like, we have not published a lot, but overcomes things like, hey, do I have to make a triple for description? Generally, the answer should probably be no.
Okay, so the focus here is start off with the identifier. Obviously, the metadata can come after that, but for now, we need the starting point being the identifier for whatever this concept is.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of important to just really hone in here is these IDs allow you to infer a lot. And so this ID, let's take the Spotify one, which are like ISRC. Even though this ID doesn't say this is a music recording classification, it is. And then our backend can treat it as such. And it knows that it should go to Spotify or Music Brains or Apple Music. And so a lot of these IDs you'll be able to infer what endpoints you should go get data from them, where to go do that. And I think that's a part that like has not been discussed enough, but like will be key, I think, for developers to understand moving forward, is there's just so much that can be inferred here. And that's a lot of how the magic happens. Is the backend kind of is able to smartly respond to just a few basic characters in these IDs.
So does that become an issue with like API costs if it has to, or is it reaching out to free API, third-party APIs to change the ID into an actual, link or a track name or an artist name?
Yeah, so I mean, this is all product dependent, right? Like in some cases, a lot of APIs are free, Wikidata, Music Brains, and like if you want to create IDs for songs, you're never going to have to pay. And if you're building an app for something else where you might not have data access, you might have to pay. And this is where I think we have to come up with strategies for how we want to snapshot these artifacts over time. So like ideally, like apps and people who run Intuition Core are not all paying the same API costs, and they can share enrichments, whether it's free or they come up with some coordination between them and do micropayments. I don't know. But I think we do have to solve that problem of how do we better share enrichments with each other. Because it'll be important.
As long as you can find most of these from a free endpoint, then that's my main concern. So.
Yeah, but not everything's free. A lot of it's not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and just to kind of like also reiterate, Kylan, to your question of like, do we nest more metadata versus just keep it flat? Like, your approach is exactly the way we're trying to trend, which is keep it as minimal as possible. So like URL, like I think you were doing the correct thing for websites up until now, which is just like URLs, and now all we do is prefix the URLs with like some things that allow us to know, okay, this is a website. And now that we know that it's a website, we're able to kind of treat it a little bit differently than a thing that's a song or a thing that's a movie. Like you could display it differently on the front end. You could reach out to different APIs to get additional metadata. You can, if you're traversing the graph with a query and a person's searching for a song, you don't have to search across the websites. You're just searching across songs, like, and the things with the song prefix. So that's kind of like what this game said. There's trade-offs with everything, but that's the kind of additional functionality that this gets us. With the prefixes.
Yeah, so if more data is held or can be inferred, or things can be inferred from the string, then I assume that means your guys in your indexer is going to be doing some processing of and parsing of the string itself, right? It'll be doing some extra work there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's a couple of stages that you can think about in our back end. So there's like level one, which is like parsing and classification. So our system just understands what this thing is. And that's pretty basic, like straightforward. We solve that problem. The next one is where do you do enrichments? That's where it's plugin based. So the backend can respond according to whatever developers need for their atoms. So you don't have to rewrite Rust. You don't have to do any of that. We are trying to make it easy. So if you have specific atoms, you can set up the backend to parse your atoms however you want. And so that is one of the values we are definitely instilling in Intuition Core. But to answer your question, yes, it does parse and go over them.
Okay, cool. So it just sounds like the indexer will be doing quite a bit more work, but for us that's fine, right? We just start it up and let it do its work.
Yeah, I would think of Intuition Core as now two pieces, which is like the indexer, which is for technical details is a timescale database, just like append only, and then what you have is a second bucket, which we call the knowledge graph one, which allows you to either filter ones that you want in there, choose your expression or interpretation, and so it's not just indexing now. There's like the second pillar, which is the projections or like materializing them, and so there's just those very distinct parts of the back end. So just worth like updating the mental model moving forward.
That also brings up another thing. So, and I think you and I have talked, I think, about some of this. So I noticed you have like a new data type is music recording. So you guys will be supporting a larger number of, at type values, right? Or something like that.
So how this happens is we actually have no opinion on this. Like, this could be music recording because you've chosen schema.org, or you could just come up with your own schema and call this song. So,
and this is on the enrichment layer now, or?
Yeah, so let me jump back.
Okay.
I think this is it's kind of difficult to explain with some examples, but like, the end state is classifications. You don't start with them, but you can choose how you interpret it. So people are not limited by the schemas we choose. They can choose to interpret however they want, and it doesn't matter as long as they just choose the root ID, and then this can adapt. In most cases, it won't, but it can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, my main thing is as long as we can use different types of, as long as we're not restrained. So I guess we're pushing away from the type thing.
Not necessarily.
Way of doing things, or.
This is where I think I stumbled a little bit in this slide deck. Let me just pull. So remind me your question again real quick. Sorry, I was pulling this up.
Well, like my main thing was, okay, in the past when we wanted to like upload, let's say a concept, we would use JSON, right? And we could upload it to IPFS or whatever. And it was, the indexer wouldn't load some data, or wasn't searchable on its type. Unless the type was thing, I think organization. There's like a few other ones, something like that. So my main question, really, what I'm getting at is just making sure that we could support however we're doing it now, that we can support kind of an open-ended or a larger variety of types. Does that make sense in the schema sense of it?
Yeah. So this is what we're kind of bucketing it as is the interpretation engine. And so what you're describing is essentially, you have an opinion of how the world should be, or this is, how I would describe it. And even though the atoms are very basic, you want to maybe decide, Intuition Core can be configured to show very basic data or very rich data. And depending on your application's need, you may want to express it differently. And so what I want to show here is maybe your app doesn't need aggregate rating. And so you choose to ignore all those triples, or maybe you do, but our backend allows you to change how that atom should be represented by adopting a schema and having that automated. So the backend will automatically readjust its shape, even though the atom never changed. And so yes, you can change. We are not confined, and in fact, you are meant to be able to express many different interpretations. It's designed to work in that way and not work against you.
What triggers the update of the data in it?
This will, it's dependent on the application you're building. What we're recommending
Okay, so it's dependent on the implementation. Okay.
It's dependent on the implementation, but what we are setting the foundation for is an event-based system. So any time an atom changes, anytime a triple is made, there is a predictive and deterministic way to have events cascade across the stack and update any necessary triples or atoms. Of course, this will just be a scaffolding for how to think about it. Every app will be different. But after a long time of thinking about this, this is, we believe, the best way to scale intuition in general. There's a lot of moving pieces, and an event-based system that allows you to update many different parts is probably going to be the best way to do it. And so we want to show the template to our community of like, hey, here's how to think about the systems in this way. And so we will help kind of provide some of that foundation to think about how do you update all these millions of records in a way that's easy.
Okay.
Sounds like that answers your question there, Kylan.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool, man. Hey, I know you said you had a few questions. I think we knocked a couple out. Was there anything else you needed to cover while we've got you here?
I guess it's one thing I'm sorry, were you asking me again?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay. So I assume we'll be able to get kind of access to whatever repository this is, so we can ask it more questions, right? If I can just load it in as context, let my AI point at it and just ask it questions about how you guys are implementing this.
I mean, yeah, that'll definitely work. The Intuition Core doesn't have all of the latest stuff in it, though. So I think more towards next week, you can ask your agent that. But I'll definitely let you know when we have an update with all the latest stuff you've seen today.
Okay, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Kylan. And yeah, I think JP had dropped some of the repos down in chat earlier. If you didn't have them, he just dropped them again. Feel free to hand those over to an agent, chat about them. If you have questions, always let us know. You can reach out to myself, and I know you've got comms with other people on the team, so we're always here to help as best we can. Coco, thank you for your patience, my man. I know you've been working on Samoko.
Yeah,
You have
right.
You're probably thinking about how to structure the data, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm not like really like thinking about that right now because it's still like very early for like Somoko. So and like the team is like not like pushing this out right now because and I think last week the team said like it's on testnet, like not on mainnet yet. So like that's not like what I've been. Well, although like I've been looking at like some of the predicates that are already like approved because I checked. I think I checked them like a few days ago, and like running through like to see what like Sumoko might need. But since Sumoko is like a prediction market, like you can't like apart from like predicates like will be or like a few predicates they are like not there's nothing like solid from that. So but like I just wanted to like know so, but like since if like because I would like love basically for someone to like be running on intuitions bonding core, but like it's can't right now. But I was like willing to I was going to like ask probably be on meta sudo like if there's a way to for the portal to like in the coming updates, basically, if there could be like a resolution, a kind of like resolutions triples on intuition, because I think like that would be like the whole like ecosystem being in one. And whereby like if you have a prediction market, I was talking to like Kylan, I think few days ago, that like a prediction market could like be leveraged for hive mind, whereby like when they claim results and it's about like a particular person in a particular place, it can be like added to like their data on like hive mind. So like there's like a lot of utility for it, but like yeah, I think I don't know if like you get like my drift and like where my question is like coming from, always going to, but like yeah.
Yeah, so the question I think I got there is that what you're building, Samoko, is a prediction market style of app, and you're wondering if there will ever be a resolving curve
Yes.
on intuition.
Yes.
Right.
Whereby
I don't.
it's just yeah, it doesn't have to like be like like there's also like going to be like the current curve styles. But I just think that would like yeah, well yeah, sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting, sorry, yeah. I'm taking too much.
Got you. So yeah, I don't think there's any immediate plan for like a curve that ends up resolving data. Billy, have you put any thought into that for like a prediction market that may be built on top of intuition?
Yeah, we've done work on this. So the answer is like I really I highly doubt that there will be anytime soon or ever a curve that resolves. But what you can do is you can build on top of the existing curves to build resolving markets. So we've done work on that front. We have like I think a decent spec for it. So definitely possible. And it's just like a kind of like a proxy contract that would sit on top of the current contracts that like does the resolving of the markets. If there's sufficient demand for that, like we could, after we get this current audit done, kind of like polish that off and get that contract audited if people do want resolving markets. But yeah, that's kind of the current state right now. Like we've thought about it, we've spec'd it out. It is very possible. It would just kind of like live on top of the current set of contracts as like a proxy contract, and yeah, we just got to do it. And if it's something that if you want to take a look at like our existing thoughts and like do it yourself, like we're more than happy to share them. But if you're looking for like an audited version of that stuff, like that probably won't come for a while. But yeah, if you want to use it, if you want to deploy it, if you want to battle test it or audit it as much as possible, then yeah, probably could get it ready like relatively soon.
Yeah, I think I already have like proxy contracts already like on intuition that like do the resolution, but I just like wanted to like out like see what you think or what you guys like basically think about it. But yeah, like I think the app is like relatively ready for testing, and I give like Woods and Bill like a look at it the other week, and also I think someone was building it also like something like a prediction market or intuition. That's like part one. So I think like I'm like trying to like see, or his is like more sports concentrated. But like if like the all apps can like come together in like one, because if there's already like a prediction market that like passes all, and there is now like another prediction market on intuition that sports sports related, is going to like be like divided attention. But yeah, I think that's what's like delaying the alpha right now, because I want to like see where his head is at. So before like releasing anything, then and I'll say, okay, he now releases he's already on testnet. I checked out his site the other day, it's on testnet already on like basic. But yeah, I think that's like what's delaying like the release or like the release into like community's hands, like especially people like me, those guys are like a few people in here. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing what updates, especially if you guys end up coming together and working together.
I do want to add a little context on this conversation. Even though, as Billy stated, we're not focusing on prediction markets, there is another small change we are introducing to the curve interface. We're adding hooks. So if you use Uniswap v4 before, there's hooks for before and after a swap. And so Intuition will have a similar mechanic. And what this allows us to do in the future is have more advanced curves. There's potential ways to hook as deposits happen, which could incorporate reads from an oracle or something else. So as Billy said, though, there's no immediate one, but we do have a few building blocks getting introduced to the curve interface that will allow us to experiment more over time and try new things that were not possible before.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah, good additional data, Kames. Thank you for sharing. Another question that we had in chat was from Zed, who has kind of a more recent builder joining our community, and he's been building something called Basis OS, and he had to jump off of the call, wasn't able to come ask it, but I wanted to take the chance to talk about this out loud so that he can listen back. He says Basis OS is a proof of work OS on top of Intuition. It turns work history into a portable, independently verified record on chain. So when a manager at a corporate domain approves a deliverable via a zero friction magic link, a Basis OS relayer or ZK email circuit settles the attestation directly on Intuition. So he's got a few questions, one on schema and identity or ID structure. When modeling a proof of work entry, what is Intuition's recommended pattern for balancing payload completeness with graph convergence?
That is quite a nuanced question. Yeah, so the ID part, so he's trying to do off-chain compute, ZK proof stuff. Yeah, this might actually be an interesting place for the URI field where you're trying to create an atom where you have some ID and you also have some compute related to it, right, to prove that atom. I'd have to probably understand his problem a little bit more, but like part of our update actually I think may address what he's trying to do. Other than that, I would ask him to reach out and send me a message,
Cool.
and I can try to maybe understand the problem a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely have him reach out on that. And he had a few other questions here that might be relevant. Maybe they're for a later time. Atoms versus triples. Should a work entry be packaged as a single JSON LD work position atom containing the role, link, and proof? Or is it better to keep it flat using a builder contributed to company domain triple with secondary claims attached?
Yes, I mean, another good question and very nuanced. Like, this is always kind of dependent on, like, if you expect the data to update. From the way it's being described, it sounds like no, which in that case, you would, again, use this URI field. So during the data, you are attaching all this metadata that needs to be attached. And why I would do that is because there sounds like there's not a dedicated API to serve that metadata. So this is an instance where, you know, it makes sense to have not coded ourselves in a hole, and you need to attach this metadata. I think this is a good example of why we're updating the contract. So that's my answer, is to use the URI field, which is exactly what it's intended for now.
Yeah, I think you could do. The reason why I would like maybe take the opposite, and this is why all this stuff is like super nuanced, but like and very dependent on the use case. So I'll echo Kames and say like need more information on use case to make a determination here. But one reason you might want to go the triple route is because like as you can see in his triple structure in the chat, like it's like builder contributed to company, and like company itself is an entity that can exist on the graph. It can have other relationships. And so if you want to like, do a query across the graph for like all of the people who have contributed to the company, like probably better to structure it as a triple so you can actually do that query and get all the builders who contributed to something. But again, depends on the use case. If you're trying to do queries like that where you like want information about a builder or the company itself as each independent entities, then you probably want the builder to have an atom, you want the company to have an atom, and then you want a relationship between the two.
Awesome. Thank you both, gentlemen. I think that's a really good point, Billy and Kames, that just need to know a little bit more about the exact use case. So, Zed, we'll have to have you reach out, maybe start a conversation somewhere that many people can weigh in on. He had a couple more questions here that I want to throw out. One regarding domain standardization. So to ensure non-crypto organizations land on canonical IDs, what string sanitization rules are recommended for corporate email domains like stripe.com when passing inputs to @0xintuition/IDs?
Yeah, I mean, another good question. So we have a package that will do basic URL sanitization. So oftentimes, like a URL has a query param. So if you've ever done a copy and paste from Twitter, you often see like there's another query that's your ID of your account, so they can associate when they share. So that's often a problem across the web. And so what we do is we sanitize these URLs. There'll be packages that everyone can share. So like even if we get different URLs, we'll all kind of end up at the same location. And so we will solve that with shared packages that people can add as a dependency to their app when creating atoms via URLs.
Cool.
Just to pause there real quick, like I think this is it's being asked in a way that answer made sense, but I think like the actual point is like, okay, like what he's trying to do is like get identifiers for corporate email domains. So do we have like a recommended pattern for email domains generally?
Email domains being like, is that different than just like the company domain?
Like, it's hard to understand. Hard to know, but like let's say I want to create an atom for Billy at intuition.systems. What would I do for that?
Yeah, I mean for that one, if you want to make the email public, you can include an ID. It's short enough. If not, you would hash it and do it that way.
But do we have like an intuition identifier like specification for like, is it like int email address and then the actual email address, or how does that not exist yet?
We do not yet. That has not been one we've done internally, but this is one we need to solve, and a good example of like, we need community input because email's a good one.
So good. It's a good opportunity for Zed to start doing some thinking and make some proposals on how this should be formatted, and then we can continue that chat and lock something in for him.
Well, not proposals on what he wants the shape to be, but to tell us what the data is, so like we can help figure out what a good ID shape will be. So like have him share just what data he's using.
Fantastic. And his last question, which also rolls into just probably figuring things out, making some proposals of what to use or having a conversation around it. It's predicates. And he's wondering if there are already existing canonical verbs in the predicates package for work attestations, or should they propose delivered work and attested by to the open registry tier?
Definitely recommend adding stuff if you do not see it there. It's an incomplete list, and the predicates is definitely, we have 100, they're kind of generic, so if ones need to be added, open up a PR, and most likely it'll get in.
Amazing. And there's a guide for that. I can point the guide over to Zed so that he can start the work on that side. Looks like that's all of the questions that we've gotten from the chat. Nobody else has asked to come up or dropped any other questions in the room. Perfectly timed at the end of the hour, which is fantastic. I don't know how you guys did it, but I'm absolutely impressed. A lot of good information today. some information about the new structure of Intuition IDs, some CTAs for the builders to come together and start talking about how to format some of this data, start coming together and making PRs for the predicates that you want to use. If any of you want to get active on this and need help, need pointed in the right direction, always feel free to reach out to any of us here on the team. Thank you all for being here. This has been recorded from a couple different angles, so these recordings will go out later. I know Intuition Box has been recording. Thank you, Wolfgang, for that. I've been recording as well. We're going to keep having these calls every couple of weeks. We're going to come together, talk a bit about what has been changing on the back end or new packages, new things that relate to building. A continued standing ask for all of you out in the audience and who might be listening to the recording. When you come by in a couple weeks, bring any questions that you might have, especially things that you can't cleanly identify or model. We'll work through it live. We'll chat about it live like we have today. Really appreciate you, Kames, Billy, everyone else from the team who came in, everyone in the audience from the community. Thank you all for taking the time for being here and chatting about this. We'll move the conversation onto the discourse forum, into our Discord, and like I said, reach out if you have any questions. We are more than willing to help. Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute.
Nope.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for the presentation, for chatting about things openly. Kylan, always appreciate your time. Thank you guys, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your week. We will see you on Twitter. We'll see you in Discord. We'll see you on the Discourse forum. Chat to you soon. G-Trust, everyone.
Ciao.
Trust. And yeah, Zed, I see you're back, but DM me and I'll try to answer your questions a little more directly. It sounds like you got a lot of nuanced ones and definitely want to help.
Yeah, Zed, I'll reach out to you as well, just to make sure that you get connected with Kames, but I got you some answers. I'll get them all over to you here shortly.
Yeah, I don't check Discord a lot, but so let's figure out a good spot to chat. I can check Discord more often though. But yeah, let's definitely make it happen.
Cool. Thank you, Kames. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Woods, great MC. Good stuff.
Thank you. All right, chat soon, everyone.
Later.